So we got this video and it's called Top Roman Facts. And I've been told it's really good. So it's always nice to find good creators on ancient Rome. And the title attracted my attention. Effing little Britons. The Romans despised the ancient Britons. Yes, we did. But apart from that, I'm going to give him the floor. I'm going to provide commentary. Let's see. Let's see if it's good or if people were trolling me.
The Romans hated the ancient Britons. They thought they were weird, bow-legged, and didn't know when they were conquered.
Right.
Hello, my name is Hadley, and I'm an archaeologist. In this video, I'm going to show you ancient texts written by Romans about how much they despised the Britons.
I just saw it. Did you see his microphone, guys? It's the Roman sponge. The one they use in the latrina. The one that they use to clean themselves off. Oh my gosh. That is the best microphone ever. Oh, that is so funny.
The Romans called this island here Britannia.
Britannia.
And that soon became the name of the province when the Roman army conquered the southern part of it.
Yes.
The conquest reached somewhat of an equilibrium around this part of modern-day England and Scotland. And this is where the Roman lines of fortifications were clustered. This is a letter written about 1900
That's Windolanda tablet.
years ago by a Roman soldier. The letter itself was found at Vindolanda Fort along what would become Hadrian's Wall 2 decades later.
Basically the wall to keep the Scots out because those guys are nuts. Caledoni. Sorry, I need to use period accurate terminology here. We're in front of an archaeologist. Love the beginning though.
Even in this period, the soldiers who garrisoned these border forts would have come across the inhabitants of Free Britannia more than most people in the Roman province. And let's just say many didn't like them.
Yep.
The letter is a scouting report because the Roman army would send out scouts to try and determine what the British soldiers were up to.
Did you say British soldiers though? I mean, I know I'm being pedantic, but Britannic, maybe it's better, but whatever. He knows what he's talking about. So
kind of strength they had, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Here's what it says translated into English.
Let's go.
The Britons are unprotected by armour. There aren't many cavalry, but they don't use swords, nor do the Britunculi mount in order to throw their javelins. That word Britunculi there at one point stumped a lot of scholars.
So, Britunculi. Yeah, you either translate it as little small Britons or like an insult, I'd say. So that's probably why he's titling it effing Britons, because that's how he's, that is one of the possible translations, absolutely. So regardless, it's disparaging, obviously. I think they're both fine. We don't really exactly know, but cool.
Many translated it as Little Britons or Wretched Britons.
Right.
But actually, more recent scholarship has suggested that the term is best translated as
the F word.
Effing Little Britons. Filling the expletive there, because I'm not going to say it in this video. I do find this quite funny though. The idea of these non-British born Roman soldiers talking about these effing little Britons throwing javelins without even being on the backs of their horses and then just galloping away, like just hilarious annoyance that these soldiers must have dealt with every single day.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. A lot of the natives were using guerrilla tactics. That's until, of course, Boudica. I mean, initially Boudica too was doing guerrilla tactics and that kind of strategy against the Romans until... And they were doing well, but then what happened, as you of course know, is that Boudica and the indigenous people, Britannic and Celts and whatever, they were like, oh, we are defeating the Romans, let's face them in open field combat. And that's when they got annihilated, because you don't face the Roman military machine on an open field and survive to tell the tale. It just doesn't happen. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Before the Romans annexed the southeast part of Britain by about AD 50, Julius Caesar led 2 expeditions against the Britons.
Yeah.
He claimed that the Britons were aiding the Gauls whilst he was busy conquering them, but they probably were other factors at play. You see, Britannia occupied this semi-mythical place in the Roman imagination.
Yeah, the Tin Islands is what he's talking about now. There were some... In fact, some people didn't believe that Britannia existed in Rome, because there was a mythological area that they called them the Tin Islands. It's interesting. I think I mentioned it on a video of mine.
It was an island that was adrift in the ocean. Most Romans at this point in history weren't used to dealing with tides, so the rise and fall of the ocean, as they would have seen it, must have been terrifying. Of course, there were stories about warrior priests and powerful foreign gods. Scary stuff. So if Caesar led an exhibition and tamed the wild island, he would gain immense prestige and glory from his colleagues.
Excellent presentation so far. I like this guy. I think luckily whoever, I don't even remember who told me that about him, but they were right. So far, excellent presentation. So no, he's correct. What did he say? Oh yeah, he talked about the priests. So you know, Brittonic priests and priests in Britannia, the Druids specifically, were so famous that Gauls from the continent, as they were studying to become Druids, they would go on a trip to Britannia to learn from the Druids over there, because that's how much they revered them. And there is a reason for it. I'll touch upon it in a little bit.
Caesar's expeditions, both of them, didn't penetrate much further inland than Kent. Caesar kept a detailed description of his campaigns, and these survive to this day in a highly editorialized format. But what they do say is ever so interesting. He says that the part of Britain he visited was much like that of Gaul because of Gallic immigration.
Of course.
Most of the people lived in the countryside. They had a few fortified settlements.
Oppida. I have to make a dedicated video to the Oppida, by the way, because the fortified villages are a fascinating topic.
They were ruled by a warrior elite, and the Britons made particular use of war chariots. These weren't scythed like Eastern chariots, but they were used as rapid transportation for the warrior elite. They would roll up to battle on their chariots, fight for a bit, throw a few javelins, engage in melee combat, and then roll away on their chariot if things got a bit hairy. But Caesar also describes the bizarre practices of the inland Britons. Here's what Caesar says, translated into English.
Subscribe. All right, before we listen to the passages from Caesar, or Caesar if you want. Interestingly enough, even this would have looked like a bizarre practice from the point of view of the Romans, because it was considered obsolete, archaic. So the Gauls, consider these are all Celts, right? These are all Celtic subcultures. Whether you agree with the approach, the standard academic approach on how we define Celts, or whether you believe you're part of the other school of thought that says, yeah, but these connections, whatever, regardless, the Gauls did fight on chariots up to a few hundred years before, but then it went completely obsolete in the continent within the Celtic substructure of the military system. That's how I told you I was going to go back to the priests and the Druids. What's interesting is that they have a lot of similarities, the Celts in the continent and the Celts in Britannia. But the Celts in Britannia, it's as if they are frozen in time. And which makes sense, they're in an island. So they preserved things that had already gone obsolete in the continent. One of these is the chariot warfare. They used to do it, the Gauls, then they drop it, but they preserve it. So from a Roman perspective, it's like you're going back in time. The second thing that they preserved is a lot of the knowledge when it comes to the religion, which is why continental Celts or continental Gauls would go into Britannia to study. And then the third thing is the body paint, which I'm sure he's going to read now, because the body paints, believe it or not, and this one I can't prove, because it's a theory of mine, but I think the body paints also originated in the continent. They were done for a certain period of time, then it was discontinued ancestrally, but we still find it here in Britannia. But I do think it's a continental thing, and the way I prove it, we want to have a discussion about this, is because there is a coin that is found in the continental situation, not insular, which clearly shows a Gaul with the body paint on the face. Exactly the same. Anyways, let's see what he's going to read. So far, as I say, excellent video.
What Caesar says, translated into English.
Yeah.
Most of those inhabiting the interior do not grow corn, but live instead on milk and meat, and clothe themselves in skins. All the Britons dyed themselves with woad, which produces a blue colour, and as a result their appearance in battle is all the more daunting. They wear their hair long and shave all their bodies with the exception of their heads and upper lip. Wives are shared between groups of 10 or 12 men, especially between brothers and between fathers and sons. The offspring, on the other hand, are considered the children of the man with whom the woman first lived.
There's a lot to say about this, First and foremost, I like that he chose one of the translations that translates the word into die. And that's right. So the Latin original term, when we describe the kind of body paint that the Celts or the Britons used, and this is not only through Caesar, but also through Pomponius Mela, who is another author that tells us about this. They use the exact same word that is used when you dye permanently clothing in the Roman context, which is why it led to some people speculating that it is possible that rather than being body paint, this may have been tattoos. Now, do we know for a fact that these are tattoos? No, maybe it is body paint, but it is curious that they use the word dye, not the word draw or the word paint. So keeping that in mind, I'm glad that he selected a translation that uses the correct thing. However, when it comes, I don't know if he's going to cover this, but is it a blue color? It depends. According to some Roman authors, is blue. According to other Roman authors, is green. My guess is turquoise at this point. This is my guess. The wife sharing, I mean, I don't recall it right now. Do we even have proof of that?
Well, that's packed full of juicy claims. Perhaps Caesar did see a few of the inland Britons during his conquest, but I think it's more likely that he's basing his descriptions on tales and a general xenophobia. We know
Well, from a modern perspective, everybody was xenophobic anyways. It's not like the Britons were xenophobic towards the Romans.
For a fact that inland Britons did grow corn.
Yeah, true.
But they also reared cattle, sheep, pigs, goats, and of course, they drank the milk and ate the meat. Caesar was misinformed, or was deliberately misinforming his readers.
I think I'll go for the second one because that is a propaganda book anyways. I mean, it does have a lot of history, so it shouldn't be disregarded, De Bello Gallico. But then again, remember who he was writing it for, the freaking Senate. So it really is a book that screams, don't mess with me, and whatever I'm doing is justified. Really, that is what the book is, if you read it in context.
Readers about that. The thing that tends to capture everyone's imagination is, of course, the wife sharing.
Yeah.
There is no other evidence for this other than what Caesar claims. Personally, I don't think we can trust him. The ancient Britons didn't appear to have much of a problem with female monarchs or chiefs. Cartimandua of the Brigantes and Boudica of the Iceni are two notable examples from later history. Perhaps Caesar was over-extrapolating this tolerance for female rule as some wife-sharing hellscape. To a Roman, there would be nothing worse because of the immense value they placed on inheritance and being sure who the true father was. Ironic that Caesar, a famous adulterer with other men's wives, would make up a story about the morally outrageous practice of wife-sharing.
That is a great point. I don't know what your name is, but I'll call you Top. That is a great point. That is a great point.
Some archaeologists have argued that Caesar's expeditions to Britain, far from being a failure, actually established various client kingdoms on the island. We certainly do see plenty of Roman-made stuff ending up in elite British context.
Yeah, this is for wine. Is this olive oil?
Jars for storing wine and olives, bronze medical...
Olives. I was close, guys. I was close. This is the amount of time I spent looking at Pompeii villas and pictures of amphorae. This is what it is. I was close. I was close.
Kits, jewelry, and even this outstanding medallion featuring the first Emperor Augustus. Maybe, but any kind of Roman rule was by proxy, if there was any major influence. After a major disaster at the Teutoburg forest, where thousands of Roman soldiers were slaughtered by Germanic war bands, the Emperor Augustus appeared to have a rethink of imperial strategy.
Sorry. It's just whenever I hear the word Teutoburg, I feel like vomiting.
The days of endless conquests were over. It was time to entrench. Britain, therefore, was to be taken off the cards as a province. Strabo,
until Claudius,
was a Greek geographer and writing at the time. He was very much on board with the Roman Empire. He may have even had Roman citizenship. He argued that the cost of garrisoning Britain would have outweighed the revenue brought in by charging import and export duties, tariffs. We don't have economic data to say whether he was right or wrong, but I believe Strabo here was towing the party line of Augustus. Britain was a horrible place, not even worth conquering. Here's one particularly damning passage translated into English.
Okay, so before we jump in the passage, as I say, love the presentation. This guy's solid. I do believe that at least all the way up to Claudius, because whenever the Romans choose whether or not they want to conquer a land, well, the expedition has a cost. It's very expensive. Only way, unless it's like a vengeance mission in general, yeah, they need to know this is what it's going to cost to mobilize our armies. We're gonna lose personnel. It's gonna bring all the food and everything. But in this area, we know that they have 3 copper deposits, 2 silver deposit and mines, lots of tin, like it was the case in the Iberian Peninsula. So then and then of course they usually, you know how he was talking about scouts, that's another thing that the Romans did a lot, scouts and spies. They would send them in advance, sometimes months, sometimes years, because they want to know, not only they want to know enemy territory for effective deployment, but also because they want to do population cluster analysis. I know it sounds strange to think that people in the classical period did that, but they absolutely did, because at the end of the day, these are going to become how many strong armed men can they raise for defense? How connected are they? You know, divide et impera, divide and conquer. How connected are they? Because you want to make sure they are divided, so they will try to become friends with one tribe, enemy with that tribe. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Like, the Romans were fantastic at this kind of tactics. But then they also want to make sure if we spend X, we need to make more. It's really that simple. And so I think they didn't feel, considering also that they had to move through the navy in Britannia. Vegetius tells us a lot about that. They probably, at the time of Julius Caesar, they probably thought, yeah, this is too, it's not worth it. However, with Claudius, the situation changes. Personally, I think it's because of the tin mines, Cornwall, Wales.
The men of Britain are taller than the Celts, not so blonde, and of looser build. As an indication of their size, I saw myself some in Rome, little more than boys, standing as much as half a foot above the tallest in the city, though they were bow-legged, and in other respects lacking any gracefulness of body. Their customs are in some respects like those of the Celts, in other respects simpler and more barbaric. As a result, some of them, through their want of skill, do not make cheese, though they have no shortage of milk. They are also unskilled in horticulture or farming in general. They are ruled by chieftains. In war they mostly use the chariot like some of the Celts. The forests are their cities, for they fortify a large circular enclosure with felled trees, and there they make themselves huts and pen their cattle, though not for a long stay. Their weather tends to rain rather than snow, and on days when there are no clouds...
That sounds like England, all right.
Fog persists for a long time, with the result that throughout the whole day, the sun can be seen for only about 3 or 4 hours around noon.
Yeah, that's Britain. That's Britain, all right. Yeah, man, could you imagine that? Like, something that we could still relate to. It was already like that when it comes to the weather. That's funny. Fantastic passage. He's really good at picking the passages that are the most interesting. So when it comes to stature, it's a typical thing with Germanics in general. They tended to be, on average, taller than Mediterraneans. When it comes to them not being so blonde, you know what that probably means? What that probably means, and we know it through Caesar, so if you connect Strabo with Caesar and Mela, that probably means they were ginger, redhead. In fact, we are told that they are distinguished. They are like, yeah, you know, Celts, Germans and whatnot, the Germanic tribes, they're blonde. But these guys in Britannia, they're redhead. That's what they tell us. Does that mean that every single one? No, it means that there is an average. And in the average, you see blondism or you see gingerism, I don't know how to call it, a lot more often than you would in the Mediterranean world. Where even today, I mean, it's present. Some people are blonde in Italy, some people are blonde in Greece, even less than Italy, but the percentages are a lot smaller than people with black hair, for instance, or people with brown hair. Again, there are exceptions, like Emperor Octavianus Augustus, since he mentioned him, he had blue or gray eyes, whether blue or gray, difficult to know with ancient languages, one of the two, but his hair was described as sub flavum. Now, flavum is the exact word that means yellow that is used to describe the Germans, like Germanic tribes, and the Celts. So, yeah, that's flavum, flower for feminine. But subflavum is a subcategory, S-U-B, right? It's a subcategory of blonde. So in this sense, what they are telling us in the sources is that he was kind of blonde, but not blonde in the Germanic sense. Otherwise, they would have used the Germanic word for it. So what does that mean? Either some kind of dirty blonde, dark blonde. I mean, at the end of the day, even today, Italian blonde is not the same as Swedish blonde. Or, and that's the other thing that I think, maybe a light brown is how I would describe Emperor Augustus. Very cool passage.
Around noon. Wow, who would even want to conquer Britain? This description reminds me of colonial explorers talking about lands and peoples in the New Worlds. They didn't really understand them, but they certainly thought they were superior to them.
And I know that a lot of like archaeology now points the finger at European colonialism and says, oh, look at these bad Europeans reaching the Americas, and then instead the noble savage, they were nice, but Europeans, being white supremacists, thought that they were better. I think that's a very reductive way to look at it, and it's extremely politicized. Yeah, European colonial powers were brutal. No one is saying that they weren't. But then again, when you reach a land and you see that they are doing human sacrifices, is it really that weird to think your culture is superior than theirs? Again, I'm not saying ethnically superior, but culturally, I personally would agree with the Spanish conquistadors at that point. And I know that's going to get me a lot of hate, but that's what I think.
Some of what Strabo says is untrue. The ancient Britons were excellent farmers.
Yeah, that's true.
The point about some Britons not being able to make cheese is something I've been researching for years.
Disgusting. What do you mean? We need cheese. What are they doing with their milk? We need mozzarella.
That's not even an exaggeration. I've yet to find an example of an Iron Age cheese strainer. So maybe he was right, but you don't actually need a ceramic strainer to make cheese.
Yeah, they could have used perishable materials. I see where he's going with this. As I say, this guy's good.
That was just the preferred Roman method.
Yep.
Iron Age people could have used baskets or bags, things that don't survive well in the archaeological record.
The Roman method is the superior method, though. Give me that one.
Some of Strabo's points can be worked to match existing archaeology. For example, when he says that the cities of the Britons are their forests, he's probably talking about hill forts.
Yes.
These seasonally occupied centres of power where the nobility and other key people fortified themselves with their cattle in these structures. Compared to Pontus, modern-day Turkey, where Strabo was from, Britain was cloudy. But compared to northern France, not so unique. I've spent a
Yeah, compared to northern France, I can see that, but still, compared to the Mediterranean, though, very different. It is true, though, northern France kind of has the weather of southern Britain. If you go further up in the north of Britain, though, it gets colder, like significantly colder.
lot of time in this video talking about the negative attitude, shall we say, that some Romans had towards ancient Britons. However, I think I could also make another video about all the ways in which some Romans loved some ancient Britons.
Yeah, you should.
There was intermarrying, Britons fighting on behalf of the Roman Empire, people wearing necklaces with the Roman emperor's face on them, and that's not to mention the emperor.
That's a based thing, by the way, to do. Wearing necklace with the face of the emperor, based.
Constantine's a great soft spot for the province. History is a complex beast where people can hold simultaneous and contradictory views on identity and how they feel about other people. But thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it.
This guy was great. Excellent presentation. Really liked it. Gave him a like. Just gonna give the link in chat if you guys want to subscribe to his channel or check out the rest of his videos. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.